What's up, Thumpers? Welcome back to another episode of Hyperheroes and Hyper Rap Out. Go! That was like the abridged version. I don't know what happened there.
That was the Micro Machines.
That was. Better so separately. That's what that was. That's what just happened. Yeah. I believe, I could be wrong. This is either our 90. I think this is our 98th episode of Hyper Heroes.
Wow.
We are 2 episodes away from the finale. I don't know what that means, but
the finale of the
of the
first
year
100.
Of the first 100.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we started this, it was kind of like we weren't sure if we wanted to do this again because we had done it previously, and we're like, I don't know, maybe. Then after Comic-Con, I think we felt kind of inspired again. Like,
well,
let's
there was
get
a
back into
reinvigoration.
this.
It was. I felt like something was missing when we took that little bit of a break.
Yeah.
And ever since we've been back, I'm like, it feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good,
yeah,
guys.
for sure.
Yeah.
Homies on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Homies! God, I wish I had California burritos. Well, we have 2 more episodes to figure that out.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, so we're getting really close to the end of the year. We only have a couple weeks left. We are going to continue doing our Mandalorian podcast, which tonight we're doing episode 6, I believe.
Yep.
If you want to get a listen to that early, check that out on Patreon, patreon.com/hyperrpg.
Battery still separately.
Battery still separately. We delay them a week, but we want to get people in on the conversation early because a lot of people have really been enjoying our talks and discussions.
I have thoughts on this episode.
You do?
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about it because I also have
excited.
thoughts about it.
Yeah, very excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I thought, well, we'll talk about it. You have to go to Patreon to find
give
out.
it away.
You have to go to Patreon.
Don't give away the good stuff.
Also, Emily and I we're in the middle of doing it. We haven't finished it yet. We're doing Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1, 2, and 3. We're doing reactions to those. I've done everything I can in my power to stay away from that section of Twitter that's been talking about all the spoilers. I'm glad I did because Part 2 was a really fun watch.
Was
there were
Zach
some fun
correct?
cameos.
Was Zach's prediction correct?
Where he was
I haven't seen it yet, so no spoilers.
You're going to stop after episode 2.
Yeah.
Listen, some shit went down in episode 2 where I was like, oh, boy.
Yeah, there was some stuff that went down that I was like, not my favorite.
I wasn't mad, but I was
wasn't
like,
either.
It was kind of heartbreaking.
It was
a
little bit.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
It was good, though. It was good.
Okay.
But the moments that I was really looking forward to, I thought worked really, really well, and they pay homage to like a lot of really cool stuff. Yeah, there's some fun moments in there that I really, really did enjoy. Speaking of which, we are very close to hitting 400 patrons on Patreon. We are jumping up every day. We're getting a few people coming in. Just as a reminder, when we hit 400, we are going to put a poll out, a list of 1 to 4 or 5 shows that we would like to do a podcast about next. Now, the podcast won't start until after the new year, but there's a lot of really great shows on right now. We're all watching Watchmen. Holy Christ,
Dude,
that show's so good.
I have thoughts. I need to talk about them with these guys.
Yeah.
So,
let's make it happen. Let's get to 400 and make it happen.
Not unless it's a podcast.
That's right. That's right. And I think it's tricky because the finale of that show is on Sunday.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to come back next week or something. Well, we're going to be on holiday break, I think.
What if we just have one in the chamber? Just in case.
Like a podcast?
Yeah.
For the
just
first
in case.
episode of
Just
here's
in
a
case.
little taste of the glory.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would be a good idea actually. But yeah, so the last 2 episodes, it's fine if I tell you this. We're going to be pre-recording them because next week next week we'll do our regularly scheduled stuff. We might have another video that's coming out that you and I just shot today.
Right, yes.
It is the USAopoly Talisman Batman Supervillains game.
Super fun.
Tabletop game that we did.
Be on the lookout for that.
Yes. So we're gonna do a cut down of that. It's not gonna be like a 2-hour video. We're gonna do a cut down, so it's very digestible. It's a really, really fun game. I had a lot of fun playing, and I'm not necessarily somebody who is into board games, but that one in particular, I played Mr. Freeze.
Yes.
You played Bane. It was so fun. Malika was on it with us.
Yeah.
Ross Thompson.
I'm Malika.
Yeah, that's right. You're Malika. Ross Thompson from USAopoly was on it with us, and we had a really good time. So look out for that next week. I think that's going to be a really fun game that if you have any friends or family who are into board games, that I think is a really great pickup. And then the 2 videos that we're going to do is our top 10 movies of the last decade and our top 10 movies of the year. Now that doesn't mean that it's going to be one list.
You gotta start with the year first, man. You kind of.
We can do that.
No, but you pitch it as top 10 movies of the decade. You gotta
flip
the first one is we're gonna do top 10 movies of the year. Then we're gonna do top 10 movies of the decade.
I guess the only reason I flipped it, which it doesn't matter because we're shooting them on the same day.
Yeah.
I still have a couple movies that I need to go see before.
Oh, sure.
Before the end of the year.
That's an impossibility. I'll always say that whatever a top 10 list is, it's just gonna be of the movies I've seen. Because of course there's shit out there that I haven't seen.
Well, but there's movies that I want to see to
for
make sure that they're
sure.
if they're.
Did you end up seeing Terminator?
I did. I did end up
What'd
seeing
you think?
Terminator. I liked it. A lot of it worked for me.
Yeah.
I would say it's here. It's not all the way. It's like a here. It's like a 75%, 80%.
I give some moments I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Other moments I was like,
yeah.
But the movie started and I was like, yo, there's lots of Mexicans in this.
Oh, it's so strong.
So many brown people.
So many Mexicans are speaking Spanish.
They speak of Spanish a lot in that movie. And I was like, this is fun. Like,
and then this movie went, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But then Lyndall Hamilton. Arnie. It was fun.
Yeah, there's definitely some good moments in that movie. I feel like this year in particular has been a very good year for movies. So we're going to be doing that at the end of the year. And then next year, we've been talking a lot about changing up some stuff, making a few adjustments here and there, and looking at like what types of other things we can do. Because, sometimes you just got to change. We've done 100 episodes that have been exactly the same week to week for the last, 2 years.
Yeah. And more importantly, the YouTube algorithms are beating the shit out of us. So we have to figure something out.
It's very true. They are beating the shit out of us.
We got to work around it.
Guys, just call it phase 2.
Phase 2.
It's phase 2.
This is phase 1, phase 2.
We want to not have to read any more comments of like, oh, there you guys are.
You're back. Like,
where'd you go?
We've been here for 2 years.
Thanks, YouTube algorithms.
And thanks for people who watch on the regular.
Yeah,
thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
The real MVPs.
The real homies.
Also, the other thing that I did recently, I moved our podcast. It used to be hosted on SoundCloud. Now it's on Anchor.fm.
Yep. Anchor's cool.
Anchor's really, really cool. I know you guys use it for your 500 Greatest Films podcast. I know a lot of people have kind of been moving over there. There are some opportunities for us to do other things there as well. And also, like, if you don't necessarily want to support the Patreon, but you just want to support the podcast, you can do that on Anchor. There's an opportunity for you to just support that if you want it, if you want to keep getting that. So all kinds of stuff, but links to everything are going to be down below. The podcast, the other videos, the Crisis videos that we've been doing, all kinds of stuff. And then, when we post stuff, make sure you guys hit the bell for notifications because we've put out a lot of videos in the last week, a bunch of trailer reactions for 007, Wonder Woman 84, Ghostbusters Afterlife. I don't even know what else we've done. We've done so much stuff. And then
Black Widow,
of course. Crisis. And then on Tuesday, we're seeing Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, boy.
And we'll come back. We'll do a non-spoiler review first, and then we'll do a spoiler review because I know people want to talk spoilers like right out the gate, but I know how the internet can be, and I don't want people spoiling stuff.
Are we holding on to that until like Friday? Are we putting
for the spoiler review? Will be on Friday, and the non-spoiler will go up basically in the embargo list, which I think is that day or the day after.
Yeah,
I think it's that day at 7.
Something like that.
7 p.m. Something like that. It's in the email.
Okay.
We'll check.
It's in the email. It's in the email.
Cool.
But we pretty much got all the housekeeping out of the way.
Okay.
I am very excited for Star Wars, though.
Me too. I've been rewatching them, so now I'm I'm getting pumped, dude.
Yeah. I put out a tweet today. I know a lot of people have been like, I don't know I think you guys have been included on a lot of those tweets too of like, there's so much stuff out there, all these interviews and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, look, just do what I do.
I saw the clip and it ruined it for me.
Yeah, I'm like, just do this what I do.
Yeah.
And I think you guys do this too. Media blackout like a week or two before the movie.
Right.
No TV spots, no trailers, no clips, no Reddit threads, no Twitter threads, no Facebook chats, like none of that stuff. Just close down the internet. Go watch the Star Wars movies, revisit some stuff you haven't seen in a while, and then like walk into a theater fresh. Don't worry about what the internet's doing.
I have a coworker who, before Endgame came out, before Infinity War came out, he was all up on those threads. All up on like all the fan theories.
Did he get spoiled on anything?
Accidentally, yes, he did. He did. And now, whenever I talk to him, I'm just like, hey, homie, so like, what's up with all this stuff? He's like, I don't even pay attention to that stuff anymore. I had such a bad experience with everything, Endgame and Infinity War, that he's just like, I can't do this to myself.
It's tough because like we live in Los Angeles, and we hear this stuff and see this stuff all the time.
We know George Lucas and we know John Boyega and we know Daisy Ridley.
We know all the people.
And there's what are we
my next door neighbors.
Yeah, exactly. They live down the street.
Yeah, right.
Gendy lives down the street. That's kind of weird.
Carrie Russell, I see her every day.
That's right.
Say, hey, what's up?
I guess I'm excited. I don't know.
We're like, see you next week.
We're like stuck in traffic together. You're like, this sucks.
She's like comparing notes.
She's rolling down the window. She's like, I'll tell you who I am.
I'll tell you.
We're like, no.
I'll tell you whose Ray's parents are.
No, nothing. I don't know nothing.
Hard.
But even Crisis on Infinite Earths, like you work at DC, so like we sometimes will like I'll be like, oh, this is happening on Crisis on Infinite Earths. They're like, yeah. And it's sometimes I'm envious of people on YouTube who do their reaction videos and they literally know nothing. So when Brandon Routh shows up, they're like, oh crap, Brandon Routh is in this?
Yeah.
Then he shows up in the Kingdom Come Superman, so you're like, oh my God, he's the Kingdom Come Superman? And I'm like, I already know this stuff. And some people make comments of like, man, it'd be really nice if you guys didn't know anything. I'm like, well, I have to go live in a farm somewhere. Because we live in LA and that's just not how it works out.
Yeah, what are you looking for, Lucas?
What you looking for? What you looking for?
Lucas has a farm you can go live on.
Did you lose your dog again? Where's that little Buster? What do you get into now?
He's gone forever.
I think he's in that
he
big old
went
box.
to the farm.
That's right. He went to the farm.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's like, I get it, So for movies and shows like Watchmen, I've done everything I can to completely mute all that.
And if you're somebody that's like, but I want it. I want the thing. I want Star Wars stuff. Yeah. And I can't wait for this movie to come out.
Movies.
Bro. Not only do you have all the movies, but
Clone Wars,
have you read every
Clone
comic
Wars.
book? Have you read all the Marvel comics yet? Go to Barnes & Noble.
The graphic novels and the books.
Get the Marvel app. Just start reading them.
Right.
Yeah, just read the novels.
Yeah.
Just distract yourself for a couple hours until you can scratch that itch, and then you can put the thing down and then go and live your life.
And you can switch back and forth between canon stuff and legend stuff. There's so much stuff in the legends that you can read.
I know, there's so much stuff.
Go for it.
Just breathe.
Go crazy.
Just breathe a little bit. Just relax.
Go outside. It's just like go
I
hike.
will show you the world.
I know. Like
go take an ice bath.
Go make that Target run. You have to make.
Yeah,
you need more teepee. You can't keep using your dish towels.
Mop your floor. It's disgusting.
Yeah, mop your floor.
Yeah.
I gotta
get that pickle juice out of your fridge. My God.
It's been a minute.
It's been a hot minute.
I need to clean my fridge too.
Yeah.
That's one of the things we have to do.
Yeah. See? There you go.
All right. With all that out of the way, and recommending you go outside and breathe some air.
And mop your floor.
Let's talk about some news. This was just announced today, and it's kind of been speculated for a while that this announcement was probably going to come at some point because of how the last movie performed. But Power Rangers is being rebooted again. The previous movie that came out in 2017 was made at Lionsgate because Power Rangers at that time was still under the ownership of Saban. It has since switched hands to Hasbro, and Hasbro has their motion picture deal with Paramount. Obviously, things like Ninja Turtles, G.I. Joe, the Transformers movies, all that sort of stuff. So Paramount will now be in charge of producing and creating the next reboot of the Power Rangers. The last movie that came out made $142 million worldwide, and it was made for about $100 million. So it didn't make any money, basically, is what I'm getting at.
Sure.
The most interesting thing about this is this summary of what the movie's going to be about. And, of course, it's very early on. So this could end up not being the case. It could change, whatever. But right now, The Hollywood Reporter is saying that the story involves the Power Rangers time traveling back into the 90s, and they're trying to find their way back home. So it's got a very Back to the Future sort of storyline. It also sounds very familiar to a show that I will not mention on this channel.
The people who know.
If you know, you know.
Who don't.
If you scroll down into the playlist, you know.
Go into videos and just look at stuff.
Yeah.
All that stuff aside, which that kind of does bum me out a little bit, that it feels similar to something that Hyper did. Even me just reading this, I'm kind of disappointed at this premise.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a huge Power Rangers fan. I feel like of the three of us, you're probably fan number one.
Probably.
You dig some stuff.
You like the
comics.
I feel like I kind of grew out of it, but I dig the comics.
But what you dig, you dig.
Yes.
Even if you grew out of it, so you like what you like.
Right.
And I'm probably third most removed. But I am not a huge fan of let's just have a sort of a storyline to allow us to go back to the 90s.
Right.
Because I'm like, okay, when the last movie came out, which I enjoyed, and it's a movie that is not perfect and definitely I thought could be improved with a sequel. Like I thought they could have made a sequel, introduced Tommy, and actually gone for it. But I thought that the cast was wonderful. Even Rita Repulsa, everybody was great. When you release a movie like that, and a lot of the people's criticisms were like, "Oh, I miss the '90s feel of the original nostalgia of the Power Rangers from when I was a child, from when I was 5 years old or whatever. I want to see that." And their next movie isn't just set in the 90s, but instead is now doing like a convoluted thing to be able to go back to the 90s.
Right.
But then that's not where the Power Rangers are originally from.
Right.
And is this going to be like the Brady Bunch movie that was like making fun of the Brady Bunch? You know what I mean? I'm like, what are you doing if you're not living and breathing in that world and kind of like taking it at face value and being like,
at least establishing it.
Right. This movie's set in the 90s with some real, again, just like Back to the Future when they went to the 50s, it was just showing you the comparison, but at least Marty was anyway. That's the whole premise of that movie. But it wasn't like it just feels very like, oh, we're gonna give the fans what they want without really embracing the concept altogether. Is what I think. I think that it could be better served if it's either just set in the 90s and like, hey, the movie is just basically takes place in, when did Power Rangers premiere? 1993.
Yeah.
Like the movie just opens in 1993 and it's like Zach, Trini, and like dun, 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 and then go from there with all that entails, but still being real. Or this is just kind of feels weird to me.
after watching the Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer, I like kind of what it does, where it establishes that the Ghostbusters have not been active for like 30-ish years.
Yeah.
The grandkids basically stumble upon the history of the Ghostbusters, and they've kind of become a myth in that world. I wouldn't have been opposed to the idea if they were going to do the reboot, if the 90s Power Rangers were Zach, Trini, Billy, Jason, Tommy, the original crew, and then 25, 30 years later, a new set of Rangers come in and they like discover the command center, Zordon, Alpha, all that sort of stuff, and then they meet the Power Rangers, they meet the original team, and like this is what this like legacy represents and what it means and why you five were chosen and the importance of friendship and all that sort of stuff. Then I think like if that was your angle, then I would be up for that. I feel the same way. There are things about the 2017 movie that I really liked. I like the cast a lot. I really like Elizabeth Banks as Rita. I like Bill Hader, Bryan Cranston. None of the actors for me were in it. Like I thought, oh man, I forget the name of the actor who played Billy.
He was it's something like Kryler.
Look it up.
Right
I can't remember.
Chrysler?
But
Chrysler.
he was so great as Billy.
Yeah.
Everybody, just like the whole cast was great. So for me, it was never a cast issue. I also agree. I think if you end on the cliffhanger of introducing Tommy Oliver, just commit. Just make the commitment and go in all the way. I also don't know from a legal standpoint because that's Lionsgate's movie and not Paramount's.
RJ Kyler. Who played
He played Billy.
Billy Cranston.
Yeah, Billy Cranston. Yep. I also don't know like the legal issues that deal with that. Because it's Lionsgate's movie, Paramount technically can't make a sequel to that, and they have to reboot. But I'm kind of also in the same boat. I don't necessarily know how I feel about them traveling back to the 90s and having to find their way home. Like I don't know. Like, are you having to go back to the 90s because the Power Rangers existed in the 90s? You have to find their power coins to then get like. Is it going to be too much of a convoluted plot?
Yeah, I'm going to try to wrap my brain around this. But Augustine, you're going to say something.
So, I think you kind of put it okay, Hector, where it could, like, Spider-Verse did something very similar to something like this, right?
Yeah.
That was a very unique case, though. If they would have said, look, we are doing a time-traveling thing, but we are going to visit the Samurai Rangers. We're going to visit, like, the Dino Force. We're going to visit when they had cars, like, all that stuff.
Turbo.
Not just focused on the 90s. I would have been like, cool, awesome. That means you guys are trying to respect the legacy of the Power Rangers and what they are. Because they aren't just the 90s thing.
No.
In the same way that the new Ghostbusters, they've been trying to say, like, well, this is one universe, and the 2016 all-female Ghostbusters are in a parallel universe, and if this thing does well, hopefully
they can go together.
Like, it's a thing of where they're not trying to replace it. They're trying to be like, we're trying to build up the brand.
Right.
You know,
so at some point,
exactly.
if people dig it.
So this could have been like all around because there are some really dope Rangers. There are some really dope what are they called? Megazords. Yes, there's some really cool Megazords out there that are not the original Dino Zords. You know, and so it feels kind of gross to me.
The Zeo Rangers are
the Zeo Rangers, my favorite, honestly, and not because we know Peter, but the Samurai Rangers. Those what are they called? I think they are just called the Samurai Rangers. Yeah, Peter Sudarso plays who did he play?
Preston.
I was going to say Winston. Preston. And all their costumes are super dope. And I actually watched one season of that because I really like the way they're kind of evolving the Rangers.
Yeah.
But to skip everything that's been done just to go back to the 90s, that's a cash grab. That's a cash grab for nostalgia. And I get it. Like, we are the people who grew up with that. We are the ones coming into the generation of, like, we're starting to take over positions of power and starting to have money and all these things. So we kind of drive the change and drive what's happening. And so it just feels gross to me because you're ignoring every other Ranger that's out there that has done a good contribution to the world of the Power Rangers. And we have friends who can probably talk a lot more about you know all the details of what those people do.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't feel honest to me, and it feels like people. It's just like that Star Wars argument that Freddie Prinze Jr. put out there. Like people are just mad that this thing's not aging with you. Go back and watch the '90s shows, dude. It's not that great.
Yeah,
it's not good.
It is for young
audiences. It was for me when I was that age.
Yeah.
I am not that person anymore. And I look back on it fondly. I remember being on the playground and we were playing Power Rangers, and I had to be the Dragon Zord, so I was walking around like this, like making the Dragon Zord sounds because I knew he had 3 claws. Like, yes, that was me back in the day. I don't do that anymore. I remember it fondly.
Don't lie.
But
I've seen you and your chonies in action.
Hey, shh.
Don't tell them.
Don't tell nobody. But I don't do that now.
Yeah.
And because I can make that separation of like, that was special to me back then. And especially trying to rewatch it, I'm just like, I'll just keep that back there. And that makes me open because I really like the reboot that they just did.
Yeah.
The suits weren't my favorite.
Right.
But overall, I really like how they treated the characters like people. I really like that they had a villain that wasn't just a screaming person on Mars. I really like that they gave purpose to everything that was happening. And I want them to carry that on. I don't care that there's a reboot right now because I feel like it's something that I'm open to change, but not everybody is in that same position because they focus so hard on what they loved. And I don't blame anybody because you love what you love.
Right.
But also don't shit on something new just because it's not what you remember.
And you don't know about it.
And you don't know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you didn't know about Power Rangers before back then. It was a brand new thing to you. Why can that not happen again?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and just to go back to the concept, it's like time traveling was not intrinsic to that first iteration of Power Rangers. That's something that kind of happened later, or maybe something that like Hyperforce introduced, or whatever.
I think there was a Time Force too.
There's room for that later, but it would be as though Hasbro again was going, okay, we're gonna do a new G.I. Joe. We know that the last couple of movies didn't work, so this will be a reboot. And I'm like, cool. This is going to be a reboot, brand new G.I. Joe. And instead of setting it today, they'd be like, and this one is about how the G.I. Joe crew get trapped in time and they're in the 80s, right? Just like in G.I. Joe. And you're like, no, that's not, that wasn't
that's not a new idea.
And that was not important to G.I. Joe.
No.
Like,
It's just the era.
And now you're just going to have G.I. Joe and Cobra stuck in the 80s fighting, well then trying to get back. I'm like, that's one too many things.
That doesn't
It's
make
already
sense.
a thing where you have to explain concepts like a Megazord and who Zordon is and who Alpha 5 is and what who Rita Repulsa is.
Where they come from.
Everything.
Right.
And on top of that, you're going to be like, these kids are stuck in the 90s too. Like, it just feels a little bit too
it's too much of a cash
but again, man, it's
money grab.
It's one sentence and I'm like, I'll need to see more before I'm like, oh, okay, that'll be for me or it won't be for me.
Right.
But I am bummed because I like the 2017
But they're trying to make it for you. That's the thing, Hector. They're trying to
grab
grab
like,
you.
You don't have to?
Yeah, exactly.
You just make a
make
balls
it
to the wall Power
for
Rangers
an awesome
movies
12-year-old
today. Yeah. Yep.
I think that's my I would say that's like my biggest gripe, I guess, for the 2017 movie. It tried almost too much to cater to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, while I appreciate the effort of what it's trying to do, again, just exactly like you said, I'm old enough to recognize that like it's not for me.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
for me when I was 5 through like 10, 12, whatever.
I'm also old enough to recognize when something's dope.
Yeah.
Like if it's dope, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to make it exactly what it was
For
back
sure.
in the day.
I mean, like, I don't know, something like Batman the Animated Series is the perfect example of like it's an animated series for kids on Saturday mornings, but as an adult you can rewatch that. You'd be like, there's so much to appreciate aside from story, also just like the quality of it and how it's made and all that stuff.
That show it's unique in its own because that show was made with so much love and attention to it that
Avatar, Korra, same thing happened.
Exactly.
Avatar came out, it is for kids.
Right.
And it got the following it did because everybody recognized this is dope.
That this story was fleshed out. This universe is there. Everything is solid.
Yep.
But something like Power Rangers, it was just like TV candy. Like just eat it, gobble it up. It doesn't have any substance. It doesn't matter. And people giving it that kind of attention and like really, really getting into it later is it's not good.
Yeah.
What's
going on?
Nothing.
No?
Nothing. He's just walking away.
All right.
I don't think
every time Zach stands there and just like thinks, I'm like, he wants to jump in and say something. I can smell it.
I know.
I can
It
smell
would
it.
probably be best if he did not.
Yeah. Okay, enough with Power Rangers. Let's talk about Marvel TV.
Yeah.
So the Marvel TV division is officially closing its doors. But wait, they're still going to be making TV shows. This is something that has been in talks and been rumored for a while. We found out, I think it was in September or October, that Jeph Loeb was leaving Marvel Entertainment. He was going to be going on to do other projects. But they officially announced, that's my watch, I'm so sorry. They officially did announce that that part of the company is going to be folding and it will be absorbed into Marvel Studios. So now Marvel Studios under Kevin Feige will be doing publishing, film, TV, and animation.
And that's Marvel Family Entertainment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
wow.
Yes.
That's a lot.
There are several projects that are still already, they're too far into the development process that they're going to continue moving forward. Most of them are animated series. The list is MODOK, Hitmonkey, Tigra and Dazzler.
Which just got everybody got let go, and they're going to restructure.
They're restructuring it. Yeah, it's on a creative pause, apparently.
It's a real bummer.
Howard the Duck and The Offenders. And for live action, Helstrom.
And the Offenders is all of those teaming up, right?
Yes. It's like their equivalent of Defenders and Avengers, basically.
And live action, Helstrom is what you said?
It's still moving forward, and I believe that's going to be on Hulu.
Okay.
And obviously, because that's happening, there's expected there's going to be at least 24 layoffs that are going to happen. Some people will move over to Marvel Studios now under Kevin Feige. Some people will probably move on. Hopefully, we'll find other work. And Jeph Loeb is going to stay on board to kind of oversee the whole changeover, and then he's expected to leave. But Marvel will obviously still be making TV shows. They have a whole slate for Disney Plus. They will more than likely still have some select things coming out on Hulu. And apparently, according to the article that I read on THR, they will very likely probably still make something for ABC Networks. There's one project that there's no title, nobody knows what it is, but there is apparently some secret Marvel project that might move over to ABC.
It sucks that people are losing their jobs.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like that even after Disney bought Marvel, bought Lucasfilm, bought Muppets, bought Pixar, Fox, that there's still this we got to consolidate.
Right.
However, I want to bring this up. There is right now, dude, I'm almost done rewatching for the first time in years the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I am enjoying it more than I ever have than the first time I saw it. I really like that show. And I think it's doing it's basically doing everything that it can be doing with its budget limitations and where it's set in its universe. Remember, the first season dealt with, it premiered after Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
Into its fall season, Thor the Dark World happened, so they used some Thor stuff. And then in the spring, Captain America the Winter Soldier happened, where S.H.I.E.L.D. was it's Hydra.
Disbanded.
And they went with it. And they took one of their major characters, Agent Ward, and they're like, this guy's been a Nazi the whole time. And and the actor didn't know. I thought it was really ballsy, and I thought that it was a really great once the show kind of got it. Anyway, what I'm saying is I enjoy it. On the flip side, there have been shows made by a lot of these same folks. I'm talking about Inhumans and Iron Fist, and certain pieces of things like Jessica Jones and Daredevil and Luke Cage. Some of the and certain pieces maybe of Runaways on Hulu or whatever. But I enjoy Runaways. I enjoy Cloak and Dagger a lot. That are not great. Especially Inhumans. And you heard about the rumors of that, of how did the show get made? Who was the showrunner? And this person who was the showrunner was apparently put there because it was they can, it was the same person that was doing Iron Fist, and it's that's not great. And it feels like it's this thing of, okay, whoever's making the decisions to kind of let that stuff at that quality go, whoever's making those decisions, I would love it if you weren't doing that anymore. And I don't necessarily mean, hey, you should lose your job, but maybe there's another position. So it's crappy because I guess I basically am saying that when you don't do your job well, that there should be some repercussions.
Absolutely.
And that people shouldn't stay safe and comfortable just because, hey,
just because they've been doing it for 20 years.
Right, or whatever the case may be. So one side of me is bummed that this kind of continues to happen, especially because, not mentioned here, but it was talked about a few months ago, the Ghost Rider show isn't going forward.
Right.
And I was like, I really wanted to see that. Gabriel Luna's Ghost Rider show, spinoff of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And even with Tigra Dazzler, where they were like, stop, let's refocus this. A part of me is like, I'm worried, but another part of me is like, maybe it was just creatively not working, and maybe some quality control is coming in at some level and being like, well, we do want this show to be the best it can be. We're not just going to push the show out. So I'm conflicted, and I think that Jeph Loeb deserves a lot of credit for his TV structuring and contributing to the MCU. However, I still think that a lot of the TV stuff, they didn't have the budgets and the support that the movie MCU entries did. But there's TV stuff that was like, y'all maybe shouldn't have gone forward on Iron Fist if it wasn't ready.
Right.
Put him in Defender, sure, but it's TV, and it kind of, it's nothing to the level of Titans, I don't think. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's part of that conversation. We've been watching Titans, and we're just like,
Did you just tickle my Titans?
A little bit. So I feel bad. And the other thing I wanted to ask you guys about, and I feel bad about, is like people are saying, oh, now they're going to come out and say every MCU show up to this point has not been official. Now going forward.
They already said that, though.
And I don't like it. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
And it has been confirmed, though.
I honestly don't. My take is I don't think it's a big deal if those shows work connected to the MCU. It doesn't change anything about the MCU.
As long as they don't just announce a Daredevil movie and have a completely new. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, as long as those shows are not contradicted, fine. And going forward, especially with Daredevil being such a huge part of Marvel, period, and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, like, we talked about it before. Just use those same actors, Marvel. You guys have some good casts. You guys have, you know what I mean? John Bernthal is Punisher. Like, don't just
why would you
don't
change
just
that?
never use Punisher Frank Castle as a character. Don't just never use Kingpin. My God, you've got Vincent D'Onofrio.
Right.
So
kidding me?
I'm frustrated if those were to be contradicted. But I'll give you this: if they wanted to recast Inhumans. Right, I'm kind of like
I hear you, Hector.
Go
but
for
it is going to be. They are going to rewrite that, and you have to understand what's going on in the bigger picture. I like that you're looking at it very individually as each story, because each story is its own individual living entity, right? But we also have to think about what Marvel Studios did with that 10-year arc, bridging together a decade of movies, 23 movies with a large story arc that I personally think was extremely successful, right? Biggest movie in the world ever. So now what they have to do is bring in all the loose ends. Those TV shows, unfortunately, as good or as bad or whatever you think they are, they need to be tied in. They need to all be under one umbrella, because if there's anything Disney's good at, it's their branding. And everything has to fall under the same type of uniform,
to be clean,
homogenous, it's all under the mouse's umbrella at this point. So yes, to me it makes sense. And honestly, as much as it pains me to say that Charlie Cox might not come back as Daredevil, I also
he's about to flip the
I
table.
know he's
Easy.
about to flip this table.
I'm like, you got Mike Coulter, Luke Cage, he's right there.
I get it,
right?
I 100%
Rosario
Hector,
Dawson,
trust me,
right?
I love them as much as you do.
I know.
But now is the time when I'm pretty sure Feige said that those movies and those shows, not movies, those shows are not officially part of the MCU.
Yeah.
They're not there. So that tells you right there that they are going to reapproach these characters, but not necessarily with the people that you might love there, which sucks because
it does.
Did you guys ever finish season 3 of Daredevil?
No, I haven't yet.
Yeah.
Dude.
Like I said, I'm in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm going to get to it.
Dudes.
It's good.
Dudes.
So,
you just
but it's
have
like,
to watch it.
But how about this? How about I posit this. Star Wars. Star Wars did a similar thing. Disney was like, okay, all of the expanded universe is we're going to say it's now Legends because we need to be able to change the story moving forward. Right. And in some of those Legends canons and books, like they killed Chewbacca. And they're like, we want to have Chewbacca in our story. We want to, going forward and blah, blah, blah. So they did that, and they still can go back to and mine some of that material.
Like Thrawn.
If it's not necessarily contradictory, they can go.
Agreed. Thrawn and Rebels.
So, like, could it be possible that they could, let's take Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., for example.
Yes.
If they want to leave Coulson dead, leave Coulson dead. I've been saying since the show started, I think that he should die again by the series end, whenever that will end.
Permadeath.
An amazing, epic death that he deserves, and is similar, gives us feelings to when he got stabbed by Loki, right? Do that. Where does that leave the rest of the cast? You got a bunch of other Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent Melinda May, Agent What if in a future Marvel movie, Nick Fury's there, and then all of a sudden is talking to Ming-Na? And it's like, we know who she's playing. You can watch 7 seasons of her show, but it's not like mandatory to be able to understand this scene.
This is Agent.
Yeah.
Right. Like, no, and look, I'm not going to fuck around and say, like, we're not talking comic books and that's not possible, because we've seen everything happen in a comic book ever. It happens. And, totally, that can happen. But I think right now there's 2 different subsects of what's happening with Marvel. It's the people who only watch the movies, don't necessarily watch anything else, and they only watch specific movies, not like us, where we've seen everything and we've digested everything. I know people who have just, like, watch 2 or 3 movies and then watch Endgame and then watch Infinity War, and they're like, cool. If they start coming in with those deep cuts and making them key points, it's going to start making people feel like well, I've been watching. Like, what am I missing out on at this point?
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's something that they want to introduce at this point.
Agreed.
Because that's also dwelling on things in the past. And if we know anything, they're moving on. Like, we're getting new Avengers. We're getting the future. We're getting the Eternal. We're moving on from that stuff.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff would just be kind of milling around in the past. And what are you really doing with that? You know?
Here's a pitch. And I'm just going to spitball this.
Okay.
But most of the events of the Netflix Marvel stuff takes place right after Avengers 1, correct?
No, that's kind of it. I get that. Daredevil, the first season premiered in 2015. Jessica Jones, 2015. Daredevil season 2, 2016. Luke Cage, season 1, 2016. Jessica Jones, season 2, I think was 2016 or 2017. Like, they're all kind of scattered throughout, and I feel like there is it's basically real time where like a couple months go by between each season of a thing.
Right.
But 2015, they're only talking about the event in New York because that did occur in 2012. It's just that they're of course still going to be talking about it 3 years later because all the buildings were knocked down and Kingpin was rising up, that sort of thing.
I guess where I was going with that is because of the snap and because of everything that happens, and we're now technically in 2023 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Correct.
You could make a brand new Daredevil movie with Charlie Cox as the main character, and he's like, he's either been off the radar for 7 years or whatever. Basically, you can like age up the character with the time, and you could give him a fresh start without having to redo his origin.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
Yeah.
And really, my biggest wish isn't that I want them necessarily to get another season of the show, and I don't necessarily want them to get a movie.
But like
I
cameos,
just
at least.
want them to be able to, if there is an opportunity, if they're workshopping the next Spider-Man movie, and they're like, you know what?
He needs a lawyer.
We were saying Craven. We were saying Craven, but it's like, for what we want to put Peter through, it'd be kind of cool if you went up against just like a New York crime guy. God damn it, we have Kingpin. What if we bring, just that potentiality, because they're bringing in, Thunderbolt Ross.
Yes.
They're bringing in, it's just what they've been doing in the movies.
See, I don't think a character like Kingpin, though, is something that they go, well, maybe Kingpin. It's like, no, this is Kingpin.
I get that.
Treat Kingpin with respect.
Yeah.
I get that.
He fucking deserves it.
You're right. He's not a supporting character.
No, he's not a supporting character.
I'm thinking of more like how Edwin Jarvis cameoed in Avengers Endgame from the Agent Carter TV show.
Right.
And I'm thinking more like have Matt Murdock cameo as a lawyer in Spider-Man 3 or whatever, or have him cameo as a lawyer in the She-Hulk show. And maybe you're right, Augustine. Maybe these characters are too big to really that they deserve better than that.
Right.
But again, dude, at the end of Shazam, how better would it have been if Henry Cavill was like, dude, I'm down to clown. Put me in the suit. I'm there. I'm Superman.
He looks
it's
up
me.
and it's like the camera goes.
I'm in the cafeteria.
I was watching the Imagineering show on Disney Plus, and Bob Iger says this thing when California Adventure was in its first iteration before they changed it, and he said that there's a balance you have to hit between being fresh and innovative and being so reverent to the things in the past that your property or your place becomes a museum, and nobody especially a company like Disney. If you've noticed what they've been doing now, their stuff is not in a museum anymore. Like they're taking an axe to everything, and they're like, how can we make this better? How can we move forward?
Yeah.
Which is what leads me to think why this is happening. Like we will hopefully in some way get an honor to what Matt Murdock, what Charlie Cox did, what all those actors did in the Netflix. But to have them be that revered for a show that for us was fantastic. Yeah. For the most of the public,
drop in the water,
drop in the bucket. Might not even have known that it existed.
Yeah.
Like,
I get it.
Are you gonna hold that on such a high pedestal?
You know what it comes from for me, dude? Is because I'm so used to the continuing cycle of Marvel Comics.
Absolutely.
And Marvel Comics has characters that do not die.
Right.
Are used constantly.
Yes.
And I've read Marvel for so much of my life that I've seen Luke Cage be the leader of the Avengers. Do you know what I mean? I've seen all that potentiality. Then I'm like, but I want Daredevil to meet Spider-Man, and I want Punisher to fight. All of that kind of thing.
But it won't be the Netflix actors.
No, we might not necessarily. Because going forward, you're talking about going forward, we will never have Captain America and Spider-Man team up again, at least Steve Rogers. Do you see what I'm saying?
Very
I'm
true.
okay
Very
with
true.
that. But my comic book brain is so used to that's kind of a bummer. But movie brain is like, no, that's the way it needs to be. Tony Stark died.
Right.
Like, I don't want them to just bring back Robert Downey just to be like, well, now you can. Robert Downey is going to talk to Shuri. It's like, I don't. Who gives a shit?
It doesn't make sense.
It never happened. I missed out. Sure, but the story was told.
Right.
So maybe Disney's looking at it like, dude, Daredevil got 3 seasons. Story was told.
Yeah.
You know, Luke Cage got 3 seasons.
Oh, is that?
Fireworks, Universal Studios.
Yeah. I was like, the light just, the sky just lit up completely. I was like,
Crisis.
Whoa, that's huge.
It's here.
It's super bright.
Yeah, it's really bright.
So that was actually terrifying.
I think you guys have therapied me out where I've determined like what it all stems from is like it's comic book brain.
Well,
I'm so spoiled by having these characters and their evolution. I want to see Luke Cage and Jessica Jones like have a kid and get married.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I want that, and then I want them to have to deal with Skrulls. Like I want a Skrull baby to replace their baby. It's all this shit that comes from comics.
And it's people like you though, Hector, that should be in the writing room and the creation room that know all of these things and hold them to that degree to where a whole creative team could come in and be like, okay, how can we take this story that is clearly important to this character and mold it into what we need in the future.
Yeah, like Tony Stark, Steve Rogers will never talk to Charles Xavier.
Yeah.
That level of like, we kind of missed out on that.
And Captain America will never be side by side in a shot in a movie.
And because the Netflix characters, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Cloak and Dagger, who those actors I love, The Runaways, who those actors I think are great, those young actors, are all still alive and around and there. My frustration is I hope it's not, and we've closed the chapter on that book. It's like, no, you didn't do the Endgame story where Tony Stark died. Like, Daredevil's there. Like,
you
so I'm like,
use
them. I want them to be used in that Marvel Studios way to be like, now I'm satisfied. Now you can, I'll never see, that Gabriel Luna Ghost Rider again. Boy, oh boy.
But what a finale.
That was fantastic.
What a great moment in that movie that he showed up in the Blade movie or whatever. Cool. Done. Like, but I just want that.
Yeah.
We took B characters, Captain America and Iron Man, and made them a 10-year arc of amazing A++ S-tier characters, like super double S-tier characters. You can do that with other people.
Agreed.
Like, it's very possible.
Agreed.
That's why part of me feels really spoiled that on the DC side, something like Crisis comes out and you get to see all these characters together.
Right.
But there is that part of me that's like, I want to go to a theater
for sure
in IMAX and see
because
all
God
these
bless them.
versions.
God bless all the people that work on those CW shows.
Yeah.
But again, another part of me is like, I wish that y'all could play in that sandbox of your $200 million budgets. Because you got the Crisis actors in their costumes that are cool, but they're those leather CW costumes, and they're fighting the CG like
shadow demons,
Crisis monsters, and I'm like, those are cool, but imagine if they looked as good as the things in Harry Potter.
Yeah,
this would be so tight.
I mean, that's a whole nother conversation that we could have.
I know.
But no, I agree. I agree with all that stuff, and I'm glad we had this conversation because it's like.
Maybe I feel better about it now, guys. Thank you.
Maybe it's getting it off your chest.
And I think it's just thinking outside of your normal type of thinking.
I've been dealing with this since they killed off Ben Urich in Daredevil Season 1. You know this.
Dude,
when they killed him off, I was like,
you'll
never meet Spider-Man.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I know. Exactly. I was so surprised by that.
Yeah.
Last thing we're going to talk about, we're going to shift over to DC. It's kind of a short story, kind of a no-brainer. Flash will be released on July 1st. 2022. Andy Muschietti is still on board to direct, as far as we know. Ezra Miller is still on board to play the role of The Flash. And then Shazam 2 also got a date, April 1st, 2022. That is not an April Fool's joke. That is actually happening.
That's kind of perfect, though.
It is kind of perfect for that movie.
The day before my birthday.
Yep. And it will be coming out about 4 months after Black Adam debuts in theaters. So if Black Adam plants any seeds towards him meeting Shazam, Shazam 2 could explore that. I don't think we'll get Black Adam in the Shazam sequel, but who knows? It's very possible that it could happen. Maybe that's why they very strategically placed those movies the way they did.
I hope they do. I not that I don't love Shazam. I do love that character. I love the Captain Marvel mythos. I love everything about it. You did Sivana. Like you did, what's the character's name? Thaddeus Sivana in the first movie. You had him meet the little worm Mr. Mind. Yes, they team up. Sure, that's a little bit of a formidable duo, but it's Black Adam versus Shazam all the way.
Yeah.
If you do not do the movie with The Rock and do the Black Adam movie that at the end of it, Shazam and Superman show up, or something to that level of like Shazam does some shit and he's just like, your move, like, and that's the end of the movie. We're like, I can't believe he won. He took over that country. He like beheaded the Statue of Liberty. Whatever crazy shit he could do, and then it opens, or like, Shazam shows up, Billy Batson's there, Zachary Levi just like, what the fuck? Like a Spider-Man ending. Yeah. What the fuck? And then cut. You need to have Black Adam as the main villain in Shazam 2. Yeah. I want to see that throwdown so bad. But if you wanted to give, again, Black Adam his own movie, fine. But
gotta
get that going.
Those football helmets.
Gotta get that going. That would actually
gotta get that bread.
Pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
A Clash of the Titans. That would be
agreed.
Pretty awesome. This makes me wonder if I remember we heard some news a while ago that Ezra Miller was kind of trying to pilot his own version of the Flash.
Right.
No,
yes.
that with him and Grant Morrison.
Yeah. So that's no longer a go.
The last duo who was on the movie were John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein.
Game night.
And then they were writing. They wrote their own version of the movie. They were going to direct it, and then they left. And right when It Chapter 2 was in theaters, they announced Andy Muschietti was going to be taking over Flash. I have no clue whose script he's using. I don't know if it's going to be the script that was written for the last movie, or if I don't know. The Flash movie is weird. The Flash movie, more so than a lot of the other ones, at least from what we have publicly heard, has been the one that's changed the most.
Yeah.
From a Flash origin story to a Flashpoint, back to a Flash, maybe something else.
I hope it's not a Joker rewrite.
Oh yeah, I know. So I don't know.
He's just gonna go down the stairs really fast.
Yeah, just really fast.
Done.
That's done.
That's the movie. That's the trailer.
Song's done.
A 3-second trailer. Yeah. So I don't know. I continue to remain optimistic about this Flash movie. I think it will eventually come out, but because of how much it's changed hands so many times, when I hear that they announce a release date for this movie, I don't really get excited. For me, I have to see, we're rolling cameras. It's principal photography.
Yeah.
It might be too early to call, but I'm smelling a gambit.
That's an industry term now. Smelling a gambit.
Smelling a gambit.
This has whiffs of gambit on it?
Slight whiffs of gambit.
Could it possibly?
What was the last news we heard before that movie was shut down?
R.I.P.
I think it was Doug Liman did an interview, and he was like, I think that project's just dead.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was too long ago. I think
no,
it
wasn't too long ago. Yeah, it wasn't too long ago.
Yeah.
And that kept being passed around.
Except we never saw Channing Tatum ever. Once. As we've
Gambit.
seen this dude now
twice.
Three times?
That's true.
3 times.
As
Suicide
Flash?
Squad, yeah.
Man.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So...
Poor Channing. He was so stoked on that.
I know, he was
Remember
so
that
happy.
photo he's taking with everybody? Like, I'm the next man.
What's up?
I'm a whole H.
That was in 2014, I think, or 15.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was like 6 years,
Sweet
5-6
Jesus.
years already.
Okay.
Or 2016, I think, so 4 years ago
And then he didn't
almost.
get to do 21 Jump Street Men in Black.
Yeah.
What a bummer.
I
think he'll be okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Same. I would agree with you, Adam, is that a little too early to tell. I would love to hear some more news, but hearing just that Shazam 2 has a release date gets me excited because
there was a movie.
I got Shazam at home. I watched that. It feels like it has little seeds for setting up for continuing the story. I think, again, kind of similar to Power Rangers, I like a lot of that movie, and I feel like a lot of it could be improved in a sequel. So I'm like, let's go, baby, let's go. Now with Black Adam, it feels like, they're really going to support that side of the DC universe, that magical side. Could be its own little mini franchise. Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's make it happen.
Bring in Dr. Fate. Bring in Detective Chimp. Bring in Blue Devil. Bring in all these weirdos.
That's what I want to start seeing from DC, is really embracing kind of more of what are the weird things.
What if they did this?
It's not even weird.
Let me throw this.
The characters.
Let me throw this at you. You know, picture this. You know how if you never saw a Marvel movie and then you go watch Spider-Man Far From Home and you never saw a single one, can you imagine that context? It'd just be like, whoa, what the hell? Look at all these characters.
No.
What is this?
Why is
this whole world?
I know a person whose first Spider-Man movie was Far From Home.
Wow.
And
what
they were like, why is Tony so important? I'm like, are you kidding me? You cannot watch this movie right now.
Imagine if Warner Brothers with the DC brand, just Aquaman 2's coming out, and it's just like, hey, there's 4 Green Lanterns.
Yep.
There, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's been now 3 Robins and a Batman. He's over there. Superman's died. He's come back. We got Supergirl. We got we got that. There's a Justice League. There's a Justice Society. There's a Doom Patrol. There's this and this and this. We had a base here. Now it's in the Watchtower. Then it came down. There's Birds of Prey. There's this and this. We've got a Suicide Squad. We've got a Legion of Doom. We've got the Injustice League. All this other stuff. Oh, yeah. Lex Luthor, Jesse Eisenberg, he tried to do that thing he talked about. It already happened. We already beat him.
Don't even worry about that.
Deathstroke's in jail. Yeah. And it's just... we're here. What if they skipped to movie 38?
Yeah.
and tried to be like, oh, now we got to worry about Darkseid. Now he's invading. Like, what would you guys like that, or do you think that they should baby steps?
I think they were already thinking of that in Batman vs Superman. Like, we got
Batman vs
hints
Superman
of all that
to me
stuff.
was like DC movie 2, not a Superman sequel.
Right.
It's DC movie 2.
Right. And if there's and I don't want to say that it can never work. Because it is very possible. Because
you watch episode 1 of Young Justice.
I'm watching Watchmen right now, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? But I'm still watching it because it's a great show. Like, it's giving you hints of what's happening throughout the episode.
It's clear when you watch that show that important things happened in the 80s.
Right.
And that's the comic.
Exactly.
So you're like, okay.
Context.
And you're like, you know.
Yeah, here's the thing. So that can be told because it's an hour every week. So
again,
we have 8 hours to explore this whole story.
Episode 1 of Young Justice, and then that whole season.
Exactly.
Episode 1 drops you in, and they're like, there's been a Justice League, there's been this, and you know, Dick Grayson is Robin, and Wally West is Kid Flash, and we didn't show you each of their origins. They're just here.
Yeah.
Would that?
I think as a movie, no, that wouldn't work. As a very expensive Mandalorian Disney Plus style show
on HBO Max,
dude,
yeah,
do that. Like, let's flesh out this world, because one thing that I love about most successful stories, or stories that I love, is that the world is already fleshed out when you jump into it. There's clear rules. There's things are happening. Like, we jumped into Avatar: The Last Airbender 100 years into a war.
Right.
You know, like,
and even Star Wars: A New Hope.
Right.
It's episode 4.
It's episode 4.
Stuff's already.
It is very possible. We just have to have the people who have the drive that really want to tell this story, rather than the guy who can get it in under budget. You know, like, that guy is not the best person to jump into a story that already has tons of history into it.
Yeah, like, I don't know, just pie in the sky, if it was like the first movie that opens, whatever it is, if it's like a Justice League movie or a Batman or whatever, you know, it's 10 years after the Apocalypse War. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, would
that
might
be, I don't know, that might be
that might be too much.
I just mean how normally in superhero universes, Marvel and DC, and even like Valiant, and even like Invincible, it's like there's like one or two sort of first characters, and then it just kind of
we're in the world.
Like, it just kind of blows up to just be like, they're everywhere. The world is populated by characters, and I'm thinking maybe DC can just start like doing that again. My dream pie in the sky for Aquaman 2 is like 5 years go by, or whenever that movie like opens, that's how much time has passed, and Aquaman just has a child with Mara, and they're married, and it, you know, just to move the story forward. Shazam 2, if you told me like, when is it coming out? 2022. When did the first one come out? 2018. So 18, 19.
No, I don't remember.
I think it was
this year.
It was 18.
Shazam?
19. It was this year.
Yeah, it was this year.
Yeah,
in
it's
April.
the same year as Captain Marvel, because the two Captain Marvel movies
right.
are the same year.
April.
So 19 to 20, 21, 22, 3 years pass. These kids are going to go from 12, 13 to 16.
They're going to be older no matter what.
You know, they're going to be older. Like, that time needs to progress. I don't want them to just be like, it's been 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's now summer.
It's a month.
We're in Philadelphia. It's summer now, and I sound like this. Like, don't do that. Make them 17.
We saw what happened with it, Chapter 2.
make them, you know, make them going to college, make them whatever the various ages they are. But if in that world they talk the way that they talked about Batman, Superman, and the rest of the characters, what if they're also like, oh yeah, do you hear about this new guy? Do you hear about this? You know, like Freddie Freeman's like, oh, dude, I'm so stoked about this new guy. He's a chimp who solves crime, and they're like, you're crazy, and then they just keep going, and fans are like, but honestly, if it's like an interesting enough little tidbit, it's like then maybe Warner Brothers could do some, you know, who do you like more, Hawkman or Hawkwoman? And then Billy Batson's like, I don't know, man, I guess Hawkwoman, she's hotter or something, you know, and then you're like, boom, you got your Hawks, like they are alive, they exist, you know. Have Plastic Man in the background on a TV like doing an interview, you know, and Billy could be like, see, how come I never get press like that?
Literally
and it's Plastic Man.
Literally just jump into the middle of the world and just start telling these stories.
Yeah.
With it being populated the way that it is, the way that we're used to the DC universe being populated.
Like when you open a comic book and they're referencing everything, and you're like, okay, but this is an Aquaman comic. I'm still getting Aquaman's story.
I'm not handing you Action Comics #1 where it's just Superman. I'm handing you Infinite Crisis #4.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck? Like, look at all these characters.
But also, is that too intimidating for a casual watcher?
Maybe I want to focus on world building, but still tell your story.
I think it's very possible to focus more on the world building rather than the characters. Like you're saying.
You're right.
Like, instead of having this movie, I think part of the problem before was every issue was like a world-ending issue. It was like a big cataclysmic kind of thing. Let's focus on like an interesting world where superheroes exist. Maybe a little bit like The Incredibles. Who knows? Like, we jumped into that world. Superheroes were already illegal at that point.
Yeah.
So we jumped into something very different. So I think, like I said, it is very possible to do all this stuff. And all these ideas we could spitball, and I'm sure there's something in there that we could find. It's just we have to, and whoever's writing it has to approach it at the right angle.
And it's about Billy Batson and that story. Like,
right,
that's what
exactly.
Shazam 2 needs to be about.
Shazam 2 could be the driver to go into this universe because now you're kind of used to, oh, well, look, he's got his family. Like, there's more people with superpowers in this. We already kind of mentioned Superman and Batman and all these things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's already lightly starting to do that. But I think for the super casual watcher, it's going to be super intimidating. Just like it's a super casual comic book reader. Can't just go into a comic book store and pick things and expect to, know everything that's happening.
I get that.
I think that's you have to kind of strike the right balance with all this stuff.
That's why I'm kind of excited for Birds of Prey, because I feel like that's an opportunity for them to do a story that's not like a world-ending, cataclysmic, apocalyptic story. It's very
it's
controlled.
Story.
And, like it's small scale.
Forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's the movie coming out after that? Wonder Woman.
84.
That can dip a little bit into both, where it's like it's not necessarily world-ending, but it's bigger scale, but also like very personal stakes. And I think there's like a way to sort of like balance all that stuff out, so you can go do a movie like Flash, for example, if it's just about, if it's an origin story and it's about, Barry trying to solve his mother's murder, then like that's very personal. It's not like world ending, but you can plant seeds of like Reverse Flash and like messing with, the timelines and all that stuff. So it's like you're planting seeds for bigger things, but also it's very personal and centralized.
I mean, that could be almost Back to the Future style movie making right there.
That's what I thought Flash Season 1 did so well, was playing with Barry's origin and how he experienced those events. So we will see.
Too many ideas, guys.
Too many ideas. Based on a news article that's literally 3 bullet points, and 2 of them are about release dates. But we'd love to hear from you guys. Let us know in the comments below what we thought about everything that we discussed. What do you think DC could do to maybe build out some sort of a universe without having to do origin story after origin story after origin story? How do you feel about Marvel TV closing its doors and shifting over to Marvel Studios? And the first topic, the Power Rangers reboot. Going back to the 90s. I think some of us were a little conflicted. Thumbs up, thumbs down. We'd love to know. Make sure you guys head over to Patreon, check out all the stuff that we're doing, the Mandalorian podcast, and a lot of other stuff. We're doing full reactions to Crisis on Infinite Earths. We'll probably be doing more stuff very soon as well. And the end of the year, we're going to close off with our favorite movies of 2019 and our favorite movies of the last decade.
Whoa!
So we will be ending on episode 100, I think.
Perfect.
Boom.
Oh, wow. That'd be amazing.
That would be
awesome.
pretty cool. Make sure you guys also subscribe to find out when we post the latest videos on Hyper RPG. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.